Hey there. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Tinnitist TV. Today, I am talking to Erica M. and Sean Menard. Now, Erica M. needs no introduction to Canadians, or at least she shouldn't. Back in the 80s and 90s, she spent a decade on the air at MuchMusic as one of the pioneering Canadian video channel's original VJs, along with Christoper Ward, J.D. Roberts, Michael Williams, and others. Now, decades later, she and her former co-workers have been reunited, at least cinematically, in the excellent new documentary 299 Queen Street West. A labor of love by director Sean Menard, this exhaustively researched and superbly edited 2-hour film traces the rise, reign, and inevitable fall of the nation's music station through hundreds of vintage film clips and new voiceover interviews with Much stars and staffers. With the film heading out on a national tour this fall, complete with interactive and intimate VJ Q&As at every screening, filmmaker Menard and consulting producer M zoomed in to talk about Much's cultural impact, who should play her in the sitcom, and what should happen to all that video footage. Enjoy. Well, first of all, thanks for taking the time out to talk to me today, guys. It's great to meet you both. We are, of course, you are, of course, Sean Menard and Erica M. Sean, you directed this new documentary, 299 Queen Street West, and Erica, you were a consulting producer and of course a star and well, Canada's sweetheart, of course. So the first thing about this that kind of surprised me is that nobody had already done this. And if I understand you correctly, Sean, nobody really wanted to do this.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds surprising when you say it out loud, but that was the reality. For whatever reason, I couldn't get funding, and it took me, I mean, around 6 years before I finally just decided I'm just gonna do this myself and move forward with it.
And so when did you come into the process, Erica?
I got an email, a strange email from someone that Sean works with asking me to be in a documentary about Canadian television. So I responded and I said, I'm sorry, I don't know who you are and why would you want me on that kind of a documentary? And my phone rang 2 minutes later and it was Sean. And he's like, sorry, let me explain. I'm working on a documentary about MuchMusic and I'd like to know if you'd be interested. And I wasn't at the beginning, but Sean is a remarkably bright person and really thought-provoking. So we talked for about an hour on the phone. And when I started to understand his vision, as you will get to know him, Daryl, you will see he's a really interesting guy. And he has get a great vision for it. And I like people who, who have the attitude of build it and they will come. And that's who Sean Menard is.
Fair enough. Why weren't you interested in the beginning, though?
I think that there's a lot of people who want to tell a story that I may not want to be interested in because, there's many ways to skin a cat, if you will. And there's a lot of different visions or versions of what MuchMusic was to many people. And I like the fact that Sean is coming from a different perspective. He's younger, so he didn't even know me. He didn't know anything about me. So his first impression was, I think, the person on the phone, or maybe some clips on YouTube. But he didn't have preconceived notions like a lot of people who are older. And he also had a very strong vision of why he wanted to make the film. And a lot of people just want to sort of rehash the same thing, but he had a point of view and a story that he wanted to tell, which I thought was actually very moving.
Well, it seems like a good point to say, what was that point of view in that story you wanted to tell, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, to me, MuchMusic represented something bigger than, just this network on the corner of Queen and John. I mean, there was this also the rise and fall of music videos, and video killed the radio star. Well, Much Music picked that up with MTV. But to me, I really wanted to be able to show that process of where music went in the 80s, the evolution of rock, where it kind of changed in the 90s, to the origins of hip hop and all sorts of different music, the rise of dance, electronic, and showing these iconic artists in a way that Canadian audiences may have taken for granted. But certainly when it premiered down in Austin, Texas at South by Southwest, that was the big takeaway, is that MTV audiences had never seen these iconic artists become real, human. And that was the magic of the VJs, a testimony to them be able to unearth and get these great conversations with them.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the themes I think in the documentary is the differences between MTV and the way they were doing things and the way Much Music was approaching things and being looser and having the VJs be more relatable and more accessible and interacting with people a lot more. Was that just something, Erica, that you think maybe part of the reason you were able to do all that was not only because of the newness of the whole medium, but also in Canada that the stakes were sort of lower and the expectations maybe were just kind of lower in the sense that, you know, it wasn't the huge American music business?
No.
Okay.
It did not feel like the stakes were lower when the entire country was staring at me as I learned how to be on television in front of a nation. So no,
Right.
the stakes were very high for all of us. We were very invested in what Much Music was supposed to be. It was a way of bringing culture together across the entire country. Because of Much Music, kids in PEI were doing the same kinds of things as kids in Victoria, BC. They were listening to the same music. They could have the same sort of Canadian cultural conversation. We were building Canadian stars, and everybody was watching. So the stakes were high, but the difference was the vision that Moses, who was our fearless leader at the time, had, which was this novel idea of, why don't you actually hire people who have something to say rather than hire people who look good and then make them read scripts? So he found people like myself who were passionate about music and just wanted to connect with an audience to share our passion. The people in the US had a different agenda, which was develop these stars, make them look good, keep them really, looking perfect, sounding perfect, never a mistake, control what they're going to say. There was zero control at Much Music. It was chaos. And I think that was part of the magic.
Right. In the midst of that chaos, though, were you able to appreciate, especially at first, the kind of impact and importance of what you were doing at the time? I mean, I'm guessing at first it was just trying to, get through the day. At some point, though, did it start to kick in terms of, oh yeah, we are actually creating something here and making an impact and not just talking between videos and interviewing people?
I have a mixed answer for you. On one hand, I feel like, yes, we knew that we had a responsibility. We knew that Canadian culture was really in our hands. So, yes. But in terms of really understanding the impact, I would say no. The fact that people still stop me on the street today, or even that this documentary is being made, is kind of shocking, because we were just a bunch of upstarts that were kind of troublemakers and doing things very different than conventional broadcasters. And I don't think, at least I didn't understand the real ramifications of what we had done until many years later. And now I actually do keynotes on the way that Much Music has used innovation in ways that most corporations still don't understand. Corporations can study what Much Music has done to understand how to build something magnificent and long lasting.
Very true. I mean, And I think that again is something that comes across in the documentary, Sean, in terms of the impact and and it's something that honestly I didn't think of until I saw the documentary. So I was glad for that, because on the one hand, I was certainly expecting all the great old footage and clips and stuff that you and I are about the same age, Erica. So I mean, I was watching at the same time as you were doing it. But then having all this context underneath it was really a pleasant surprise to me. On the logistical level, though, the thing I always am amazed by documentaries of this sort is just physically how you put this all together, because it just you talk about a needle in a haystack. This feels to me like an infinite amount of haystacks and a very finite amount of needles that you have the ability to show off. So how do you do that? you know
Yeah, you just dig in and start taking a bite and go from there. We started with around 5,000 clips that we had earmarked. And then the final film, there's about 385. Of course, the entire film is wall to wall, 2 hours of archives, intentionally to bring you in to that world and what it was like to have that Much Music experience. But it started with conversations, started interviewing Erica right off the top. And I try to go in loose. I don't have a series of questions. I try to be curious. I try to figure out what might be interesting to pair it in the edit later. But really, it just began with conversations. I interviewed 10 VJs, and that started to, the more as I progressed, started to inform what the story in the edit would eventually be, if that makes sense.
I'm guessing people probably also said, "Oh, you should dig up this, and you should dig up that, and you should find this, and you should find that." Was all that stuff eventually findable, or were there things there were holy grail things that just never showed up?
Yeah, it's a combination. I mean, a lot of the VJs would tell me that, how are you going to use a lot of this footage because it doesn't exist? There was a almost a myth to a bunch of footage was thrown out into a dumpster and that you're not going to be able to find it. And although some of that's based on true, on reality, there was some early stuff that was thrown into a dumpster because they didn't have the space to keep those physical beta tapes around. But the majority of it does exist. The difference here is 95% of the footage in the film was not digitized. So they really came from these old Betacam tapes from the original camera operators that were sitting on shelves. And so that was one of the coolest part, was to be able to take this footage that eventually, I mean, those tapes have literal shelf life, and to be able to help preserve them. And just from the success of the film, Bell Media is now putting the resources to digitize everything to preserve it forever. So it was a combination of that. And then during COVID, I guess one of the most interesting parts about Much Music, it was live. If you missed it, you missed it, unless you had a VHS player and could put in a tape and record it. And what was interesting is, YouTube very much took a lot of the shine from Much Music in the early 2000s. There's no longer a need to tune in to watch a music video. And during COVID, a lot of people had time on their hands, and I guess came across these boxes of old VHS tapes and decided to throw them up on YouTube. And that helped immensely in just figuring out a gauge of what exists, what doesn't. And, a bit of a shorthand here is that when the VJs were on and Erica had to fill essentially 4 hours of time between music videos, completely unscripted, that stuff was never really fully digitized. I mean, when the big artists came in, for sure, that's on a tape and that got used through the years. So again, when someone would put in their VHS and just record for 8 hours, there was just this raw, incredible moments. And we actually sourced a lot of people's original VHSs, the audience back then, and used that in the film to exist.
Wow. So when you were seeing some of this stuff, Erica, I mean, I'm guessing you're not kind of a Norma Desmond type who sits in her basement and watches old clips of herself every night. What was it like to see some of this stuff again after probably decades?
I just want my kids to see it. That's really what I kept on thinking is, oh my God, my kids would be blown away by this. especially because my kids are essentially the same age that I was when I first started on Much Music.
Right.
So I want them to see what their old mom used to do.
Have they seen it yet?
They have not.
Oh,
I'll be
okay.
going to Halifax and sitting with my daughter, and then I'll be going to for a big screening, obviously, and then I'll be going to Vancouver, where my son lives, and he'll be my date for the big screening there. So it will be really a treat, and that's why I love Sean Menard so much, because that is a huge gift for me personally.
Well,
Yes.
that's one of the coolest things, to be able to take the film, across the entire country, and be in these venues where people are a little bit more used to seeing live music. We're out there in your part of the world, Daryl, in Winnipeg,
Yeah.
in November, and so to be able to travel with the VJs and be able to have a new audience be able to consume it, that's pretty special.
Yes. So I guess it's going to be different people in different cities based on who's available and where they are and all that. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Is there, Erica, is there something that you wish was in the documentary that isn't, or is everything in there that you want?
Well, it needed way more of me, but there was only 2 hours. So, Sean had to put other people in there.
Well, I'm sure he's going to put together a 6 hour director's cut of just Erica for you, right?
I do think it would be such a brilliant thing for, if Sean was into it or someone, to do an ongoing series on some Bell channels like Crave or something, because there is so much footage that is just sitting there.
Mhm.
Why don't they package it and get some of the old hosts like me, not so old, but host anyway, and put some new life to all that footage? I know that so many people would really enjoy it.
That was honestly the first thing that I thought when I was watching the documentary is, I think it's kind of ironic in that you were mentioning that, YouTube kind of killed the station, but I swear to God, you could just take even just the raw tapes and just put them on, a station, an 8 hour block every day, repeated 3 times, and people would just sit and watch that stuff. I mean, the videos or whatever, but you guys talking, the interviews, the live performances, there's no way that people wouldn't just, be flipping by and go, what the hell? And sit there and then 6 hours later still be sitting there watching it.
Mhm. It really is a snapshot of a lot of people's youth. That music and that time was really important to a lot of people. So for sure, watching that. But Daryl, don't talk me out of a job. You need a host for
Okay, you can
context. Come
host.
on,
You can
dude.
host. Did you learn anything from watching the doc that you hadn't perceived or thought of or known?
Oh, absolutely. Because I left after 10 years, but the movie really gets going after I leave.
Mhm.
I'm just the first chunk of the film. And when I left, I turned my Much Music TV off. So I didn't know any of the hosts after me. I didn't understand the actual trajectory. So it was really informative for me to see what actually happened after I left.
Hmm. I like the fact too, Sean, that at the end you really don't sort of soften the blow of how it went downhill and what happened to it and why it went off, which is again kind of not what you would necessarily think. A lot of people would have just kind of made a nice diplomatic bow out, but you kind of expose it warts and all.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the beautiful things. When you finance a project, you have full creative control.
uh,
So you can make those decisions to be able to. But that's, I think, an audience that lived it, and that is so frustrated that it doesn't exist. That's what they want. Is what really happened. And it is interesting how Much Music was really a trendsetter, and then you see what happens when you try to follow the trend. It just, and I see it a lot in modern music and art and streaming platforms and all that stuff, is when sometimes the audience wants to sit down and not really know what they want to see or hear. Sometimes they want someone that's an expert of that space to say, hey, check this out. And that's how you end up expanding your mind and being introduced to things you normally would have never found on your own if you stayed in your genre or your algorithm or what have you. So I think I hope people watch that, and that's my big hope, is that people take away an understanding that coming from that place of creating from within, or saying this is what I think is important or cool, has a lot more powerful impact on people instead of flipping it the other way.
Right, right. Talking about staying in your genre, this is kind of a pivot for you in the sense of, if I've got it right, you've pretty much only done sports documentaries, or primarily sports documentaries, before now. Was it a big sort of change for you in terms of moving from that arena to this arena, or are there parallels that kind of work all the way through?
Yeah, in terms of my process, it was no different at all. It was just, instead of individuals that got paid millions of dollars to perform athletic feats, it was ones that
Yeah, I know. No millions of dollars over here.
bags of potatoes to go on air across
Lots of
Canada.
CDs. We got lots of CDs.
So,
Yeah.
but it was, I mean, that was the most difficult part. Is for years I'm such a music fan. I've been wanting to tell a music documentary, but I don't get those opportunities because people just want to keep you in your genre, as you said, which was up to this point sports documentaries. So hence probably another reason why I had to finance this myself. But if you're going to do a first ever music doc, I feel I jumped right into the deep end and covered, a pretty big topic.
The
Uh-huh.
thing is that makes me crazy is that you're just a good storyteller. And the fact that people put you in a box or other artists in a box is really an example mostly of the Canadian media that doesn't give people permission to move from their through their different interests. And that's one of the reasons why I have so much respect for Sean, is that he understands that and knows that if you would sit and wait, it just won't happen.
Right. Did you find that was the case after you left Much? Did you feel like you were sort of pigeonholed as, you know?
Of course. Even when I would do voiceover auditions, they'd ask me to do the Valley Girl, and which is back in the day, and I was like, I don't know how. I don't I don't think you understand who I am. I don't know how to do a Valley Girl. I read books, and I'm a trained actor, and I don't know what you're talking about. So I know, again, and I had to redefine who I am on my own and build my new businesses on my own, because people couldn't see past my former role on Much Music. That's why I had to close the door, and I had to rebuild something completely different. And then people started to go, oh, wait. So she was good on Much Music. She's good at being an entrepreneur and starting a huge company. They're very different. Oh, that's interesting. Someone can do two different things.
Yes. But now you're back to talking about Much Music. It's all gone back to square one.
Oh God, not for long. Trust me. That was the thing I said to Sean. Oh, I'm going back. Don't like to go back. I like to go forward.
Well, let's talk about that. What else? What else are you working on? What other projects have you got going forward?
I work a lot in the world of brand building and marketing, helping brands understand how to connect with their audience. I also work in the world of like keynoting. So I talk a lot about innovation and how to be bold and take great risks. Sean will probably be a case study moving forward on how to build the company or the community or the culture that you need for your business.
Okay. And Sean, first music documentary, also last music documentary, or are you going to do more of this, you
Yeah, I
think?
don't know. I just kind of think in terms of stories that I want to see, and
Mhm.
it's not anywhere available. So
Okay.
then I end up just scratching my own itch. And if it carries on enough years where I feel I really need to get it out, I will, take out a second mortgage on a house and try and bring it to life, because that's it's it's not up to me what happens to the film, but just creating something that doesn't exist and knowing that it should,
Mm.
to me, is that's what it's all about.
Did you pay off the first mortgage on the house already? Or
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, that's why, to be honest with you, is why I'm bringing the film on a tour across the
okay.
country. So is to, to make back the investment I've put out on this project.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's why all the VJs are doing it, because we're helping Sean pay for the film. We are all
Wow.
supporting him as he told such a beautiful story about us. We want to repay him and help him tell his story, and in doing so, be able to pay off his second mortgage.
The Maynard Much Music Mortgage Tour. It has a ring to it. Do you already have another film on the go, or something in your mind that that's kind of taking shape for you?
Yeah, I just wrapped production on a series that kind of explores on how the sneaker industry came to be $100 billion a year. Kind of goes beyond just Michael Jordan, some marketing mavericks in the 90s. So it combines marketing and sports and stays in there. And then the next hurdle, which has always been the goal, is to make Hollywood films. Getting my scripts read is a lot easier now after being at South by Southwest. I never thought that doing a Much Music doc would help take me to that level. But that's the beauty of this story. It resonated with so many American audiences. So it's getting ready for the Canadian premiere on September 22nd. I've just been informed that I'm the very first filmmaker in history to rent out Roy Thompson Hall to put on a film, which is really not trying to create the history, just trying to bring the VJs on stage and give them this platform. I mean, they were the stars of the film. And then we're taking it across the country, 13 different cities. So that's going to be the exciting point. That's why you make movies, right? And not a lot of filmmakers get that old school, even use that moniker, filmmaker. They don't get that experience of sitting down in an audience as a collective. There's an energy, there's a buzz, having people react. That's what you sit and put all those long hours in the editing, envisioning to get to that point. So having the Canadian audiences experience it, and then be able to bring the VJs on stage for what we're calling intimate and interactive, and do what they did best, which is interact with the audiences and take questions and talk about this incredible trip down memory lane.
Are you
Yeah.
looking forward to that aspect of it, Erica?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I mean, it'll be fun traveling. It's a little different than what I do right now.
Mhm.
And spending time with, Rick Campanelli, Michael Williams, Monica Diol, Steve Anthony, Bill Welichka, like a whole crew of people. It's going to be really a memorable time in my life. And again, thanks to Sean for making it happen.
Have you kept in touch with some of these people, or is this kind of a reunion for you?
Oh, there's a mix. I mean, there was a lot of people on Much
Sure.
Music, so some of them I'm really close friends with, and some of them I never met before. Ironically, Rick Campanelli, Rick the Temp, and he says we met. I don't think we did. We met after he left Much Music, probably about 8 years ago, through various circumstances, like through the world of marketing. But now I get to spend time with him, and I can tell you that he is one of the nicest people I've ever met in my entire life.
Well, that's good. That's nice to hear. It'd be terrible if it was the opposite. Um, I was talking to Chris Ward a while back when
Mm.
some of his albums were reissued, and he was saying that his book was just optioned, that somebody wants to turn it into, I think at the time he was saying maybe a sitcom or something. I guess perhaps a WKRP in Cincinnati-esque thing, which I guess kind of just raised the question to me of who do you think should play you?
Who should play me?
Yeah,
Well, I should.
there you go. I should have seen that coming, shouldn't I?
I was gonna go with Marissa Tomei.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's a work. I think that would work. I think Monica Deal will probably pitch for Zendaya, but good luck on that. You know. And I told Ward that he should get Timothy Chalamet, and good luck with that too.
Well,
Anyway,
his book is fantastic if you ever get a chance to read it. I mean,
oh
it's
yeah,
just live. It's I mean, it brings you right into that world. So I'm not surprised that it's being
Oh,
brought into the
when I
TV
read
world.
that book, it it actually made me cry
oh,
because it
wow.
was like reading my high school yearbook. because there was something that we all experienced together. I mean, it was a remarkable time, and we did things and saw things that nobody else could have ever experienced. And we did it together. There was a great camaraderie, not just with the VJs, but with the entire crew, the people who were doing the camera, the lighting, the sound. We were a team. And I am actually close to a lot of those people who were not necessarily on camera, but they were, in quotation marks, the crew, who've gone on to have really fantastic careers. So that book talked about all of that. And if anybody is interested in the history of Much Music, I would highly recommend that you pick up that book and listen to my podcast. Because I have a podcast called Reinvention of the VJ, where I do long, in-depth interviews with many of the on-air people over the years, some of whom I'd never met before and some of whom I worked with. And I talk about how they got into the job, their experiences on air, and then how they dealt with the difficulty of leaving a high-profile job like Much Music, and then where they decided to put their efforts next. So for me, I love the concept of reinvention, and why not talk about what I had to go through as a VJ on Much Music and see if there were parallels with my peers.
Perfect. Yeah, and I mean, again, I just think it's so great that you made this documentary and that you've got the podcast, because so much of what you were doing back then, I think, was seen as ephemeral. You know what I mean? It was here, it was gone, and it was, you know, to a lot of people just music, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So to have it be not only brought back, but put in the context and given the importance and the historical aspects that were there, I think it's just a fantastic job, you know. So congratulations on it, both of you.
Well,
Appreciate
really,
that.
Sean, I was just, you know, I was just footage. He was.
No, but Erica, you were able, even listening to your podcast was great. I used to get to the point where I was using it as prep before every, because you were unearthing some great talking points that I would not have come across. So I would make notes. Oh, that's something interesting to bring up. So I mean, yeah, I mean, definitely as a consulting producer, I definitely got my money's worth, and it was a team effort for sure.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks so much for the movie. Best of luck with both it and the whole tour. I'm sure it'll be a blast, and we'll keep in touch with whatever you guys get up to next.
299 queenstreetwest.com, tickets, tour dates, everything on there.
All right. Thanks a lot. See you guys down the road somewhere.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Daryl.